What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I am back with another betting show as we look ahead to mainly UFC 304 here. I also have one bet from the Cage Warriors card. It's going to be the Flier this week, and it's a little bit of a smaller Flier because I have a sneaky money line Flier here for the bet of the week, because there's this prospect that I really like in Cage Warriors, and he's fighting a name that a lot of people who don't even watch Cage Warriors maybe might know. So we'll get to that in our fifth bet of the week. But I want to talk a lot about UFC 304 today. There's a lot of very interesting fights on the card. A lot of people obviously from my part of the world who I've watched an awful lot of, so I want to break those down today and give you my picks as well. Actually, I saw someone in the comment section last week where I kind of said on the show, like, I don't mind if I get my bets wrong, as long as, you know, you get an idea of maybe where you should go. And then someone said, you should try to get your bets right. Now, I definitely didn't speak right there necessarily. Like, I always try to, obviously, I don't want to give you losing bets, but yeah, I just, the way I definitely misspoke on that last week. I always obviously want to give you winning bets, and all of the bets I throw out to you here, I think they're going to win. So that's that. And yeah, shout out to all the people in the comment section as well, and let me know. I want to see in the comment section this week, right, your best bet for UFC 304, and next week I'll have a look back at them, and the best bet we'll read it out and we'll have a look through the bet. So if there's enough in the comment section, we'll do that next week, and we'll make a running segment out of it. So yeah, comment below your bet, the price it is right now, and if it wins, we'll or wins or loses, it doesn't really matter. We'll see who is right or wrong next week. Right, before we get into the bets for this week, quick recap of last week, as we always do. The overall record, 55 bets correct through 7 months of the year. We'll take that out of 111. 111, and only two Flyers hit. The Flyer, first of all, last week, I went for the Irish trio last week. Honestly, the one I was most worried about won, and then the other two lost. So not a great treble parlay there. But look, the Gerardus fight was very close. He could have won that fight. I thought the judges got it just about right, but he could have won that. And Ryan Shelley, I think, made a big mistake, obviously, in the middle of that fight. But Matthew Elliott did win, and that was plus 130. So if you bet that straight up itself, it was not bad. The other four bets, only three actually went down because the Jonghyun Park fight didn't happen. Rabzabov ended up losing. I was very surprised with that one, to be honest. And then Janakovsky lost the decision over in KSW. But Maria Silva did win, minus 188. So at least we might have clawed a little bit back there. Not a great week, I'll be honest. But we've had a lot of even weeks, I suppose, recently. After, I suppose, the blowaway week we had around the last PFL. So, you know, to take one backward step week, we'll take it. We're still about the 50%. So we will go from there. Right, let's get to it. And I'm going to start with the main event from UFC 304. Let's, you know, no more beating around the bush. Let's get straight in there. Main event, UFC 304. And I'm giving you a bit of a good price bet here. I'm going with a plus 250 Leon Edwards to win inside the distance bet. Now, I've talked many times before, and, you know, a lot of people here might be saying, Shawnee, you've told us before, you know, in a fight like this, with a lot of stakes in the, you know, when it's 5 rounds, when guys have gone to a lot of decisions in their careers, like both of these guys have, to bet the decision, right? And I wouldn't at all talk you out of that. Right, here I go again, hedging my bets, right? But having gone back and watched the first fight, I think I kind of threw everything, threw every other piece of, like, statistical analysis out, right? 19 decisions for Bilal Muhammad is an awful lot to ignore, and 14 for Leon, also an awful lot to ignore, right? But I went back and watched that first fight. I'll mention it again. The fight happened in 2021, 4 fights ago for Leon, and for Bilal, I believe it was 5 fights ago, right? So I would say, obviously, you know, Leon has become champion since then, has improved, and Bilal has improved as well, right? But I don't think they're vastly different fighters. I think Leon might be a little bit, it's funny, I'm going to say this now, right? And I think the 2 points I'm about to make about Leon actually contradict each other, but I think he's more confident, but maybe lets go of his shots a little bit less in the specific Belal fight, right? We'll get to that in a second again. And I think for Belal, he's become a better wrestler, better grinder, better grappler, and a better all-around fighter. You know, a better all-around fighter as well. But the best part of his game, I think, has gotten better. So there's that, right? Could you say both of them have equally improved since the first fight? Absolutely. I think that'd be a fair assessment. And I don't think, like, no matter who you're picking would necessarily disagree with that. Maybe bits and pieces. So when I went back and watched the first fight, I remember the fight being relatively even with, like, Leon maybe a little bit ahead, and then there was obviously the eye poke and all in it. But when I went back and watched it, it was way less even than I remembered. Like, Leon, like, significantly got the better of Belal in that fight. You see the commentary straight away talking about how Belal usually is the one that likes to push the pace, but he didn't succeed with that at any time during that fight. Leon consistently held the center of the cage, consistently pushed him back, and consistently won that battle, right? Now, that battle doesn't win the fight, as we all know, and especially under the judging criteria and everything. And look, he didn't win the fight, as we know. But what came after it was also very significant. He hit Belal with a big head kick, rocked him, cut him, landed a lot of nice straight shots, as well as his hooks, where the commentary made a good point of, like, saying, right, this is a straight puncher in Leon against kind of the hooker in Belal. And Leon was able to do both. He was able to throw his straight shots and his hooks from outside of a step of range to inside of a step of range to inside in the clinch even. Belal was winning all of those battles. So he won the area battle. He won the range battle. He won the battle from range. He won the battle inside of range. And when they got to the clinch, it was, I would say, 50-50, maybe slightly towards the end, but I would shade it to Leon. He won all of those battles, and he looked, to the contradictory point I made a little bit ago, he looked really sharp in terms of he was letting those shots go in that fight, right? And imagine, so I said earlier on, more confident, less shots go, a little bit less, right? I think more of a technical fighter now and able to win more technically. He's always been a really good technical fighter. And maybe you could actually say that Leon Belal fight was a bit of a standout, right? In the first round anyway. But I reckon they'll obviously go back and watch that first fight. And if Leon Edwards and his team go back and watch that first fight, I think they'll be very remiss not to let those shots go, right? Because it's very easy for me to sit here, or anyone to sit here and go, right, look, let your hands go and you'll beat someone. Like any fight, right? Bobby Green and Paddy Pimblett, we'll talk about that in a second, right? Bobby, go and let your hands go and beat him. Well, it's not that easy, you know. Paddy might win the range, he might take him down. If you let your hands go, he'll get under for a takedown. The thing about this one is, all of those other problems, Leon has already solved them. In the first fight, he was already winning all of those battles. The inside battle, didn't get near a takedown. The battle to run the fight, to run the area, to win the range. And, like, if he doesn't do them again, okay, fair enough, we've a different discussion. But if he does do them again, then I think he has the ability to be afforded letting his hands go, letting his feet go, letting that big high kick go. And I think, having watched the first fight, like, a lot of people, you could say that for a lot of people, right? You could say that for a lot of people. They win that battle, let your hands go, you know, which is easier than someone who's losing a battle and go, oh, just let your hands go, right? But they still won't do it. But for a guy who's already been in the fight against another guy who he's going to fight again, if he wins that battle again, then I think he will, you know, refer back to what happened in that first fight, let the hands go, and maybe not the fingers per se, but let the hands go, let the big kicks go, and he knows that Belal is there to be taken. Like, he almost finished him in that first fight. And honestly, I think he will in this fight. I think he's going to get inside. I think he's going to win the clinch. I think he's going to stop the takedown. If it goes a little bit longer, will Belal get a takedown at some stage? I absolutely could see it. I think the improvements he's made, I wouldn't rule it out, right? But my call on this, Now, we could make a lot of different calls and a lot of different ways it could go, right? I very much think if Belal finds a way to take him down, right? And not just take him down, because watch this with Leon as well. Because Leon in the Kamaru's second fight did a great job of not even defending the first takedown. He defended after he was already kind of put on his butt, and then he pushed the head down and stand back up, or control the wrist and stand back up. It was, he didn't mind being taken down. He just would refuse to be held down. So he was defending the holding down while he was being taken down, and didn't get held down for the full fight, right? So if Belal puts him in that position, you could see the same thing happening, but I digress on that point, right? But if Belal is able to get into that position, could he win a 5-round fight in that way? I could see it. I really could see it. I don't think it'll happen. I think Leon is too good. I think he's a really bad matchup for Belal if we're going by the first fight, and I think he'll finish him. So first bet of the week is Leon Edwards inside the distance. We'll touch on a few of the other bets as we go here in a second. But yeah, that's bet number 1 of the week. I'm after losing my bets here. No, I have them back. Right, bet number 2. We're going big. We might as well keep going big. Co-main event. I'm going to go for Tommy Aspinall to win by knockout at minus 130. Honestly, I don't think there's a lot to be said about this one. Aspinall 14-3 now in his career, and Blades 18-4, right? So it's funny that Tom he's at a stage in his career where I think he is untested very much against a level, but there is very much not that level in the UFC. Like Blades and Pavlovich and Volkov are, the second level of UFC heavyweights, right? The problem is the second level of UFC heavyweights, if you're to talk about lightweight, you're talking about, how would I put this? The Bobby Green level, right? Paddy Pimblett's getting a test at lightweight this week against Bobby Green, right? Bobby Green, I would put on the Curtis Blades, Volkov sort of test at heavyweight. The problem is there's just no, 19-3 rated heavyweights that are going to be a test. Whereas in lightweight, we could pull up the rankings, but you could have Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, the list goes on and on and on. Hinato Moicano, Jalen Turner. There's loads and loads and loads of really good, solid fighters. Just doesn't exist, right, at heavyweight. And the point being, right, just to give myself a bit of an out here, and a lot of people have kind of anointed Tom Aspinall the best heavyweight in the world already, right? And I can understand why, to a certain extent, there's been a lot of hype and all of that. And, John Jones has only fought for a few minutes at heavyweight. A lot of people think Gagne has been fraud checked. I don't personally think that myself, to a certain extent anyway. So, right, the heavyweight division at the very top, you could argue, isn't right there. But Aspinall, to me, has not gotten there just yet. So I'm not willing to completely say he's there, right? Right. So there we go with that point of it. Blades is not there either, though. And I think this is the sort of fight where you look at the records, and at heavyweight this is a bit easy to do, I say. But Tom Aspinall, 14 wins, 14 finishes, 11 knockouts. Right? So a lot of people have this idea that Tom Aspinall is some sort of Buchecha or something, and I honestly don't know where they're getting that from now. Is he bad on the ground or anything like that? I wouldn't say that, definitely, but yeah. Curtis Blades, 4 losses in his career, all 4 by knockout. So, just looking by that, doing the opposite of the main event, it's fairly self-explanatory why you would go for that bet, and it's a very good price, like just below even money. Now, on the fight itself, look, Blades is 13 wins via knockout as well. He could very much knock out Tommy Aspinall. He could take him down. He's never won by submission, but, he might ground and pound him out or whatever, and he could. I know a lot of people are absolutely sold on Tom Aspinall. I'm sold on him as a top prospect. Would I be surprised if he lost this fight? Not at all. No. Not in one bit, because just he hasn't done it yet at the top level. Until he does, we'll see. But I think Curtis Blades has such a gaping weakness in his game that Aspinall would want to be look what happened in the first fight. He jumped up, fell over, tore his knee, right? Something like that would have to happen, or something like him, throwing a big shot, getting caught with a big shot, or him falling over, landing on bottom and get pounded. Like some sort of big, horrific mistake would have to happen defensively, right, for Aspinall, right, or else, just as part of the fight. I think for Blades to win, right, and Blades would have to execute as well. But I just think when the problem with Curtis Blades, and we'll just run through those 4 losses very quickly. Pavlovich with a first round knockout, Lewis with a second round knockout, Ngannou with a first round knockout, and Ngannou again with a first round knockout. And I haven't gone back and watched all of them, right? But I feel like every single one of them is Blades coming into range, getting these head uppercutted off him, basically. I feel, maybe not necessarily always an uppercut, but he comes into range, breaks through it, thinks he's going to get a takedown or land a big shot, and he himself is the one that comes off worse. That to me is like the Curtis Blades loss, right? A Curtis Blades win, it could be a knockout, it could be ground and pound, it could be him getting on top and winning a decision, or over a long period like he did against, it's looking at Volkov, Rosenstruck here, win decisions against him. But the loss variation isn't really there. It's come in and get knocked out. Look what Aspinall did to Pavlovich in his last fight, right? He nearly got knocked out himself in the process as well. So if you're Blades, there is some hope. But he came into the pocket, landed a big shot against the guy who was doing the same and left himself open. That is if the fight goes a little bit longer, okay, you need a more complicated game plan. But the fight is very unlikely to go longer, You don't need that complicated of a game plan if you're fighting Blades. Now, maybe a takedown attempt comes before that from Blades and he needs to defend it. Okay, we'll add in that bit, right? But get the fight to the feet, get the fight into a striking battle and land that big shot. And Blades has shown in the past that he walks into that shot over and over and over again. And I'd be very surprised if he didn't do it again. So that's the pick. Tommy Aspinall to get the knockout against Curtis Blades at minus 130, which I think is a very good price. Very good price. And it's TKO KO as well. So if it's ground and pound or anything like that. Right. The next bet might shock a few people here. The next bet I'm going for, plus 105, Paddy Pimblett. I'm taking Paddy Pimblett. I have talked about this fight for Paddy Pimblett probably 4 times maybe at this stage, and on different guises or on a Q&A or something like that. And every single time, for the first 3 times, I've picked Bobby Green, right? And I was on the Severe MMA podcast this week, we were talking it through. I had watched a few of the fights, and everything, when you dissect all sides of it, I would be remiss to not change my pick based on how my feelings changed. All right, so I've changed my pick to Paddy Pimblett at plus 105. And the reason is this, right? I think it's very easy to look at Paddy and incorrectly analyze him, right? So I've been watching Paddy since he fought in Cage Warriors years and years, like years before he was even close to the fighter he is now. And I feel like I know his game very well. And when he came into the UFC, there was a lot of people like really badly analyzing him, right? And it's almost like that analysis has it improved somewhat, right? So we've seen some of Paddy's strengths and weaknesses, but a lot of the times like this, things like that can go over the top. There's a famous one of Wayne Rooney, right? So a lot of people said Wayne Rooney, he's the next Pele, he's going to be the best player in the world, and he didn't quite reach those heights, right? But everyone fails to now acknowledge that he was actually probably like the 3rd or 4th best player in the biggest sport in the world for a decade nearly, right? And he just does not get the credit for it. So there's a tendency sometimes when we overrate someone, when we go over the other side, we tend to underrate them then. And I think that's what's happening with Paddy Pimblett here. I think there's a tad bit of underrating of him going on. And the main reason I'll say why he's been underrated is I don't think people acknowledge how good of an athlete he is. And I don't think people realize how good he is, both on the ground and actually transitioning there. Like, Paddy will take a chance at a flying triangle or pulling guard or putting his chin on the line to get inside to get a takedown, whereas a lot of people won't. You know, Curtis Blades, I just gave you an example of a guy. He also does that, right? But he gets knocked out because of it. Now, the trouble is, Paddy will as well at some stage, right? That's just going to happen. But is Bobby Green the guy to do that? I think that's the biggest question I asked myself before this pick. Is Bobby Green the guy to do that? And I get swept away sometimes in looking at the Grant Dawson fight and go, yeah, look, he's just going to do the exact same thing to Paddy. And like, he could. He very much could. But that's not always the case for Bobby Green. It very much isn't. Like, he is not a massive knockout artist. He's a good few knockouts in his career. He's a good knockout artist. He hits hard. I certainly wouldn't like to be hit by him. But, you know, he's had, he's 50th fight this weekend. He's had 11 knockouts, right? So, you know, a fifth of his fights almost in by knockout in the last, so he knocked out against Grant Dawson. His knockout before that was Alaya Quinta in 21. And before that, his last knockout was in 2013 against James Krause. Right? So, in 11 years, he's had 2 knockouts. Maybe a little bit unfair, right? Maybe a little bit unfair there. But when we look at that in the cold light of day, and we think the way that Bobby Green beats Paddy Pimblett is to knock him out, it's just not, you know, statistically strong enough for me to say he will. Now, if he can knock out Iaquinta and he can knock out Dawson, should he be good enough to knock out Paddy Pimblett? You could also argue it that way, absolutely. But he didn't knock out, you know, okay, he triangled and he finished Tony Ferguson, but he didn't knock out Drew Dober, Hakparast, Fiziev, Moises, Alan Patrick, Venata, Guida. You know, there's a lot of guys there, Eric Koch, Venata again, you know, lads who, okay, Paddy Pimblett I wouldn't say is better than most of them, to be fair, but a good chin, and he could stack up against some of them. So, the second part then is the athleticism that I talked about earlier and the ability on the ground. Like, if Paddy can get inside, I do think he can get him to the ground, and I think he can win the fight on the ground. I think he would probably, if it goes to plan here, I think he'd probably end up submitting him. And so I like Paddy in this fight. The full betting odds, I believe, are not out for this fight yet, as I recorded a little bit earlier this week, just because I know Cage Warriors is on a little bit earlier as well this week. But I like the Paddy by submission bet. I think it'll probably be a relatively good price here as well, as I just checking in. Yeah, it's not quite out yet, but you know, if Paddy is even money to win the fight, he'd probably be plus 300 or something to win by submission. So I wouldn't put that out of the question at all. So Paddy Pimblett is the next bet of the week at plus 105. Right. Fourth bet of the week is Shauna Bannon, and she's minus 180. Now, you might be thinking here, Shawnee, this is Irish bias here, but Shauna has a new opponent. Her name is Alice Ardelaine, and she is, I got a few texts about this. I know there was a lot of consternation going around from the UK MMA sphere about this, that Alice is, you know, more of kind of an online influencer than anything else. Her last opponents are like, you know, 1-3, 0-5, 3-3, 0-0, or something like that. You know, I don't have them in front of me here, but something like that. You know, but in fairness to her, she's been in there with Zhang Weili. Okay, she got finished pretty quickly. But haven't, and you know, and Diana Belbita as well, who obviously we see in the UFC, got finished by her as well. She's game. She comes out, she throws her shots. But watching a couple of her recent fights, she is very sloppy, very open, And the only way I think she can beat someone like Shauna is to kind of overwhelm her. Whereas if you look at Shauna, right, and look at her, look, Shauna didn't have a great UFC debut. The first 2 rounds, the third round she did very well. She won that round, and the second round was relatively close as well as Shauna came into it. But this is the perfect matchup for me for Shauna here, because Alice is just going to come forward, as I said, throw her big hooks, and Shauna is, with her kick fighting background in taekwondo and all of that, it's going to be perfect for her. Just to circle out, throw her kicks from far, allow Alice to come in, pick her off with shots. I also think Shauna can take her down and probably win on the ground. I would again, this could be a bigger price bet as well, and maybe this is Flier 1.5 of the week. I fancy Shauna maybe by submission here. She is good on the ground. She's not won by submission yet, but she's taken a few of her opponents down. In Invicta, she took her opponent down and she looked good on the ground. She's trained under Paddy Pimblett, who's a very good submission artist and has been for a good few years now. I just think Shauna's going to be way too good for her. I think this is a mismatch and should probably be a bigger price. And, as I said, I don't like to give bets at a price like that, but I think this is very, very one-sided. And the only way I think Shauna loses this if she gets caught with a big shot or kind of overwhelmed by the pressure. But I don't see that happening. I think Shauna's going to win. As I said, pick her off from the outside, throw those kicks. When she rushes in, dip under, take her down, and the fight is there to be won. So I'm going for Mama B as one of the bets this week as well. Right. The final bet and the flyer of the week, as I said at the start, not the biggest flyer of the week. It's only plus 300. But I'm going for Michele Pagani over at Cage Warriors Manchester to beat Mason Jones, the former UFC fighter who's back in Cage Warriors now and is on a good run at the moment. I was stunned when I saw this fight was made because, look, Mason Jones was fighting in the UFC. He had a good run in the UFC. He'd won. He lost to Ludovic Klein by decision, but he'd beaten David Onama before that. It wasn't on a bad run at all, but I think his contract went up and he decided, look, I'm going to have a few fights. Has won 3 fights in a row over in Cage Warriors. Has looked good in all 3 of them, 3 finishes. And I was kind of thinking, right, he'll have maybe one more kind of warm-up fight type of thing and go to the UFC. But that's not at all happening. He's fighting, in my opinion, I'll say it, I think he's the best prospect in Cage Warriors at the moment. Like, I thought James Power was the best prospect, and he beat James Power in his last fight. Like, if you haven't seen James Power yet, please go and watch him. He's a very, very, very good fighter. He also beat Josh Onwardy, who's a dangerous guy and a good fighter as well. And he actually finished Joshua Onwardy over in Bellator. Josh is 5-1 and he's 5-5 in his career now. But he started off his career beating Leon Hill and Harry Davis and a couple of good fighters. He's actually won 3 of his last 4 fights. Again, like the guys he's gotten beaten by are all like really, really, really good guys. So that's a top win. And Pagani, to me, in that fight with James Power, like, his ability to out technique one of the best young technical fighters I've ever seen was ridiculous. I couldn't believe how at ease he looked in that fight, and against Mason Jones, a guy who I think puts how would I put it? I think he puts heart with technique and wins a lot of his fights. I think Pagani might have to, force Mason Jones to show even more of that heart than he wants to. I think Pagani is going to give him fits on the feet. I think he's going to jab him up. I think he's going to be a little bit faster at times. And I think Mason Jones is going to have to bully him here to win. And I think he's going to have to make stuff like this. To me, and I guarantee you, if you asked, let's say someone like a Brad Wharton or an Ian Dean or a Graham Bylan, the Cage Warriors crew behind the scenes, if this, because obviously they can't talk about that work, but if you ask them behind the scenes, should the betting odds be the way they are in this fight, I guarantee you they'd say absolutely not. Maybe they'd have Mason Jones as the favourite, maybe at like plus 125 or something like that. Or sorry, minus 125 or something like that. Maybe they'd have Pagani plus 125, plus 150 maybe or something like that. But plus 300 I think is crazy. I think he is the livest of live underdogs. And honestly, if you were to give me even money on both of them, I think I'd pick Pagani. I'm that high on him after what he did in that James Power fight. I think he's very, very, very good. And I think he's going to win that fight. So check out that one, and we'll go from there. Right. Those are the 5 bets. I'll recap them again at the end. But to some of the other betting odds from the weekend. Let's start with Cage Warriors. We'll run through it pretty quickly. Dario Belandi, Robin Roos. I think Belandi's a great price here at minus 250. Roos hits hard, very, very hard. But all I think Belandi has to do is avoid getting hit very, very hard, and he wins the fight. So I'm going for him in that one. We talked about Jones Pagani. Cullen and Blasco. Cullen's a big favourite in that one. Salatani Paterno. Paterno is the favourite. Ali Salatani is a good fighter. A live underdog at plus 150, but I do think Paterno will win it. I also like Adam Shelley, a bit of Irish bias here, but this is a 50-50 fight to me. And if you're giving me plus 140 over minus 188, I'd probably go for the plus 140, to be honest. I like Shelley at that price. And then Camilleri and Sabatino, even money, or even prices, minus 180 in each. I'd go for, I think, Camilleri in that one. So to the UFC, my guy Oban Elliott, he's actually the underdog here. I believe this has moved, has it? Yeah, he started minus 110, and now he's into, I see one place here, he's plus 125, but around the plus 115, plus 120 mark. You know what? I like this fight for Oban, to be honest. I think Preston has never won by knockout. A good fighter, but I think Oban is a better boxer than him. I think he can land shots down through the middle. If Oban stops the takedown and maybe gets a takedown of his own, I think he could dominate this fight. Now, if he doesn't and Parsons gets a takedown from himself, look, he'd be favoured. But I like Oban. I might be a bit biased on that one, absolutely, but I'll take Oban at that. Parkin against Brzezicki. Parkin's a big favourite, minus 300, as he should be. Kiefer Crosby's a big underdog, minus 410 for Patterson. In some places, minus 430, plus 320 for Kiefer Crosby. It's a little deep, I think. I think it's a little unfair on Kiefer, that one, but, I think Sam Patterson is rightly the favourite there. I think Kiefer will have to dig very deep. He's done it before, though. Beating Alex Oliveira and others. Like, if you put Alex Oliveira in there with Sam Patterson, who would you be picking to win? You're probably picking Alex Oliveira. So I wouldn't rule Kiefer out, but I think Patterson is the rightful favourite. Duncan Rodriguez, very interesting fight, very close. The favourite is Duncan, around minus 140, plus 120 for Rodriguez. I'm interested to see Christian Leroy Duncan. Like, he is such a great prospect, but I don't know, has there been enough progression for me? Like, in the middleweight division, if he does continue to progress, I think he is like championship level, genuinely. But I just haven't seen that over the last couple of fights. Rodriguez is a tough guy. He hits very hard. But no, I'll go for Duncan. I like the price on Duncan, to be honest. I do like the price. That's kind of the top and bottom. Actually, just a couple more. Petrino, Bukauskas. Bukauskas is the favourite there. I probably would just lean to him. A few more. We have the main and coming. Caelan Loughran, Jake Hadley. Interesting fight. Interesting odds. Caelan Loughran, a big favourite here, minus 225. Jake Hadley around plus 175, 180 in some places. Tough fight to analyse on short notice, I'll be honest. Because Hadley's obviously, as I said, coming in on short notice. Caelan is the type of guy who prepares a lot for his opponents. Now it's Southpaw, who he was supposed to fight, and he's fighting a Southpaw again. I'm very much torn on this one. Really, really torn on this fight. I think the in-between bits for Hadley have always been an issue. He's a good wrestler, good striker, but I don't think he can just put them together. Whereas I think Caelan is probably improving in those areas, but better at putting them together. And I think that I might just lean Caelan because of that. Then we've Bruno Brazil, Molly McCann. Molly McCann's a minus 350 favourite here against Bruno Brazil. I'll tell you what, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I tell you, I definitely wouldn't be betting Molly McCann at minus 350. Anyway, would I bet Brazil at plus 300? Probably would, yeah. Wood is a massive favourite over Pineda. He'll win that. And Allen is a big enough favourite over Chikadze. I was going to put him in as one of my bets. I believe that has gone in. It was minus... I thought it was a bit better. I thought it was minus 218, but now it's out to minus 275. Not at that price for me. I like Allen by decision. That bet isn't out yet, but I do like Allen by decision. maybe you get that around even money. I'd take that. Makayev and Cape is the toughest fight for me in this card to pick. I'm leaning Cape, to be honest. I'm leaning Cape, and he's plus 130. He's the underdog, so we go for that there. Green Pimblett, obviously we talked about that. Aspinall Blades. Let's have a look at a couple more prices. Straight up, plus 290 for Blades. Aspinall minus 370-ish. Again, is it a tad steep? It just might be. Look, if you fancy the Aspinall submission, it's plus 420. You know, if you think Aspinall is the Buchecha everyone's making him out to be, let's go for that. If you fancy the round 1 finish, fight doesn't start round 2, minus 122. I like that price. That could very much happen. And the over-unders as well. Under 2.5 rounds, minus 435. Under 1.5 rounds, minus 180-ish. Not a lot to be had there. Fancy the Blades knockout, plus 490. Plus 490 for that, so that might be interesting. And in the main event, straight up prices, Bilal, minus 210, minus 230 for Leon. The over-unders, let's look late over-under. So over-under 4.5 rounds. The over is minus 215. The under is plus 162. As I said, I fancy the finish for Leon, so I'd probably like the under there. Fight goes to decision, minus 163 up to minus 200. Fight doesn't go to decision, around the plus 150 mark, plus 140 mark there. So interesting. Muhammad, if you fancy him to get the knockout, plus 1,000. If you fancy him to get submission, plus 1,400. Plus 300 for, plus 310 even for Edwards to get the KO. I have him inside the distance, so my price is a little less than that, plus 250 as I said. But yeah, there's some interesting bets there. If you fancy Muhammad inside the distance, plus 600. You know, so if you do fancy him to win, could he win inside the distance? I suppose we'll see on that. All right, that is it from me, everybody. My 5 bets for the week. Edwards inside the distance, plus 250. Minus 130 for Aspinall by a knockout. Paddy Pimblett, money line, plus 105. Shauna Bannon, minus 180. And in Cage Warriors, the Flyer of the week, plus 300 is Michelle Pagani. All right, I will leave it there. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Please bet responsibly. I will see you all next week.